Watch out!
The Switch era of Pokemon has seemingly come to a close. We had a wild ride of spin-offs and mainline titles on Switch with mixed results, but here we are. After consuming the highest amount of mainline titles for Pokemon on a single console, so many questions and speculation are floating around about what's to come on the Switch 2. Looking at trends can reveal quite a bit about what the future might hold, so let's discuss all the possibilities laid bare for us to see. First of all, I want to talk release schedule. Typically, we get a Pokemon release every year, be it a mainline game or DLC for a mainline game. So I've been seeing a lot of people expecting a game this year if the Switch 2 is announced. However, I think a lot of people forget that Pokemon has a track record of skipping a year or two from a console's release before putting their own game out on the market. Even on the Nintendo Switch, which saw the most frequent release schedule in Pokemon history, Game Freak still skipped 2017 to release Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee in 2018. A year after the Switch landed on shelves. Before the Switch, Game Freak actually used to skip 2 years before their first titles for specific consoles. The 3DS released in 2011, Pokemon X and Y released in 2013. The DS released in 2004, Pokemon Diamond and Pearl released in 2006. In North America, it actually released in 2007, but Game Freak no longer stunts releases based on region, so let's stick to the 2-year gap for now. All of this is to say, there's a strong possibility we won't get a mainline Pokemon game this year, so maybe we should temper our expectations a bit on that. What we might see is a spin-off Pokemon game, and with that I couldn't have any guesses for you, since it would literally be reaching into a void of endless possibilities. Could be something completely new, like what we saw with Pokemon Quest, could be the coveted remake of Pokemon Mystery Dungeon 2 that we all want to see. Who can say? Regardless, the true exciting thing to speculate on is what the next mainline game could be, or look like. Now, the Switch was the first console to see a remake be Game Freak's first title to land on it. Before that, we started our handheld generations with new titles, with all new Pokemon and regions. However, it seems Game Freak needed a little more time to acclimate to a home console, so they started with Let's Go. Technically, they did still stick to their release schedule of 2 years after the console release to unveil their new generational title. In this case, it was Sword and Shield. So maybe Let's Go was just a weird exception, or perhaps a new norm for their acclimation tactics whenever they get their hands on more powerful hardware to learn the ins and outs of. This means if we do see a new game in 2025, it will most likely be something more in the lines of remake territory, and 2026 will probably be the next new generation. However, let's not forget, Game Freak has been wanting more development time, so perhaps some of these games will either be outsourced, or their release schedules might be pushed off by at least a year. Only time will tell on that. Now, personally, I have my own ideas for what the next game will be. I'll talk about that later, but first I want to discuss what many of you guys think. I've seen a lot of people throwing around ideas for a Unova remake, or maybe even a Black and White 3. Those are very possible, and I can't deny the possibility of this coming to pass. So if we get these games and they're outsourced, it's very likely that Game Freak will be very controlling with how they're handled, and will probably only allow them to be recreated faithfully, a la Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl. It's a shame, but that's the sad reality. Now, if they're not outsourced, Game Freak will likely take the art style in a more artistic direction, to give a similar look and feel to Black and White. It will probably be something two-dimensional with 3D elements like Black and White were. I can definitely see Game Freak having some fun with this and wanting to have fun with this, so this is the most likely outcome if we do get Unova content, whether it's remakes or the third entry. Personally, I don't think we'll be revisiting Unova. We've already did so quite a bit in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet's DLC, and I feel like Game Freak is a little scared to touch too much on previous titles fans love after our response to Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl. So I do believe that the DLC was our Unova fill for the foreseeable future. The next big idea people have are some sort of Johto game. Let's Go Johto or Legends Johto are the biggest ideas I see flying around. A few realists out there also expect remakes for this region to be faithful remakes a la BDSP. Seriously, BDSP ruined our expectations and hopes for remakes. I've said it before and I'll say it again. That's the legacy it'll forever leave behind, not letting us want remakes all carefree anymore. Like, that's so crazy to me. Anyways, a Johto revisit is also very possible. Personally, I don't think we'll be getting a Let's Go game again. The Go name is kind of dead now, and those games weren't really received well by fans. As for Legends Johto, I think it's too soon. From what I can tell, Game Freak is treating its Legends brand as a passion series where they put time and effort into making them fun and polished. I don't expect a Legends game on Switch 2 for quite some time, but it likely will be our Johto revisit. Again, I have other ideas for what region the Legends games on Switch 2 will tackle, but I'll discuss that later in this video. As for a faithful remake, it's also possible, but I'm not so sure Johto would be the region they see worthwhile to revisit with a remake at this point. I know, we all love Johto, it's in my name for goodness sake, but only time will tell if we'll see it at all on the Switch 2. The third idea I've seen from people is Game Freak creating a Scarlet 2 and Violet 2. Now, I'm kind of conflicted on this. On one hand, it's clear Game Freak really loved this region and story that they crafted. We got 3 DLCs for it, and the game was super expansive. I can definitely see them loving it so much they want to continue with it. On the other hand, the games are already so full, and as I mentioned, yeah, it had 3 DLCs. They might just feel as satisfied as we are with it and be ready to move on for the next game. So now I want to get into my own thoughts and predictions, and they're probably gonna sound outlandish to you, but Game Freak has been known to throw curveballs before. I personally think we're going to be revisiting Kalos in some way, shape, or form. Kalos has been the most underrepresented region in Pokemon history. It never even got a 3rd version or sequels or anything. If a Kalos game is the next one we see on Switch, it will likely either be a remake, sequels, or maybe even the missing 3rd version I mentioned earlier, Pokemon Z. Kalos definitely deserves to show its beauty in full HD, and I also think the story, and especially the legendaries, mainly Zygarde, could really use some more fleshing out. Now, I do think it's possible to see Kalos return as a Legends game, perhaps dealing with the war we heard from in X and Y, but if we see Legends Kalos, it will likely be later in the Switch 2's lifespan, not at the beginning, since, like I said, Legends games seem to be Game Freak's passion project that they give more time and effort into making. The more I think about it though, the more I do think we're gonna see Kalos in some way on Switch 2. Almost guaranteed. It's right after Unova in the release order, and the original games were fairly panned by consumers, so Game Freak shouldn't be scared to reach back out to this generation. And I think the region itself just merits some Switch 2 HD graphics. That's my biggest hope, and simultaneously my biggest prediction. I wasn't a fan of X and Y back in the day. I still think they're the worst mainline Pokemon games ever made, and I would love to see Game Freak do Generation 6 some justice in the near future. But what do you guys think? Let me know your hopes and predictions down in the comments. Afterwards, check out more of my videos like my retrospective on Pokemon on Switch. The link is right in front of you. I've been Johto Johnny. Enjoy.